Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com, here to do a video on a couple things, just some pickups and but first and foremost, it's gonna, including that, is on the you call it progressive metal of a kind project band, Sculptured, Don Anderson, the band Agalock, who a lot of people love, especially people that like sort of the kind of progressive death metal, progressive Opeth is a simple one. I'm Agalock frequently when I first heard of their name. The Opeth comparisons, grant there's a lot of differences in Agalock and Opeth, but there's a lot of similarities. From Portland, Oregon, although people have always thought that they sound like they should be from somewhere in Scandinavia because they have that sort of Scandinavian aesthetic. But the thing about the band Sculptured, it's Don Anderson, who's the guitarist from Agalock. He's the primary songwriter from this project, and there's a couple points more about it, but they have 4 albums. Their most recent album just came out. I have it. I finally got the vinyl. That's why I was waiting. I mentioned it before. It's called The Liminal Phase, 2021. But I'll go through my collection / history real quickly here, as quickly as I can. So, yeah, I mean, all right. So this is their first album called The Sphere of the Lily is Aurelia. I can't even, and the words of a fun little Aureoled. Aureoled? Yeah, Aureoled. Here it is. It came out in 1998, so I did a little bit of just research about Agalock too, and well, this is before the first Agalock album that came out. So people that were thinking, well, this is a side project of Agalock. Technically, Agalock was a side project of this, given that they put out their first album. Now, I don't know if they were writing and they formed Agalock before this, but and some of the members besides Don Anderson were part of this band, including John Haum. So, so the description I mentioned is sort of progressive black metal. I'm not sure. It's prog metal of a sort, almost like post-metal. They use like chamber instruments at points and samples, among some other stuff. And this album, and if I'm not mistaken, the album after it, and they use a lot of piano at points too. And it's not necessarily emphasizing the production being a little lower fidelity, but just some of it ends up being that way. But I've also noticed Agalock albums having that kind of grainy tinge to them at points. But you know, they use vocals that are some clean and some that are more, you know, not black metal shrieks, but yeah, they're the form of, they're slightly less punchy than, say, your Michael Ackerfeldt's growls. But the thing I'll say about this specific record is, of course, the title, the Spear of the Lily Aureoled. You know, I'm going to turn the light on. I usually don't like to have it, but as you can see it, I'm trying to avoid the glare. There's the title right there. And here are all the track titles. Of course, my jewel case has been cracked. I'm trying to avoid the glare. There's a lot of long song titles. Now, the band that I thought of, there's a couple bands that I know that for. Lado and Wright, even Mew, some of the early Mew albums have songs that are long. But Maudlin of the Well. Maudlin of the Well actually hadn't put out their first album when this came out. I think Maudlin of the Well's first album, My Fruit Psycho Bells, came out in like 99. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Maybe in the same year. Anyway, that's the band there are moments on this record. And then the record that came out 2 years later in 2000, it's called Apollo Ends, at least the title, and it doesn't even have the track list on the back. It's interesting. It has the title, the tracks on the side. I think that's the band that they remind me most of, even though I guess there's less chamber instrumentation, but there's still a lot. There's a lot of trumpet. I was listening to this album and the first debut album for the first time in years. I bought these, I don't remember what it was, like 2015, 2016. This record, the second record, Apollo Ends, I think overall a lot of people consider it the best Sculptured record that are really into them. Yeah, and there's a lot of, again, mixture of death metal vocals, the growls, and the clean vocals. They use trumpet and even some flute on this. And I listened to it on Spotify and I hearted most of the record. Track Apollo Destroys, Apollo Creates, I'd say is uneven in that it's almost like a pure post-rock song the first 5 or 6 minutes, almost like Godspeed You Black Emperor. And again, the release date on this, I'm not sure whether it was relative. They could have been listening to Godspeed, maybe F sharp. But if Lift Your Skinny Bits came out the same year in 2000, the release dates on some of these, I can't find the release years I know, but the release dates themselves. Yeah, it's his it was Donny Anderson's one-man project in 1996. That's what it says on here. Anyway, so these two records, some people consider sort of the best ones. I came to these later. But I still like both of them, but I'd say that there's sort of somewhat of a formula. Some of it's not, I wouldn't call it disjointed, but it's more like the best moments on them are great, but the songs themselves are hit and miss. It's like you listen to the songs, you listen for that odd time signature, that trumpet part, that little kind of soaring moment, that piano section. But like I said, I heard it almost all the songs. Almost every song on here has some moments. The last track is just like a coda. It's called Summary. But like between Goldberg, Snow Covered Land, none of them are short. These are all 5 to 7 minute songs. Above the 60th parallel, so. And song to fall on deaf ears. If I had to pick one track, that would be my favorite on here. So now really explain how I actually discovered this band. And I had known Agalloch long before Sculptured. I knew about them in the early 2000s. I never listened to them because I really wasn't that much of an Opeth fan at that time either. Once I sort of got used to listening to screaming vocals, the death metal growls. But this record came out after I'd already kind of adjusted. Really after I became a Between the Buried and Me fan, I got more into a lot of the extreme metal. It is prog metal though. First and foremost, I think this is prog metal, but this to me is really won me over, and I remember this came out early in 2008. This album, it's called Embodiment. There's a longer explanation. And the whole write-up here, Embodiment is a highly sculptured is in an oasis of originality in a desert of doldrums. If you really want to expand your horizons, shatter your conditioned expectations, and pummel your paradigms, then few bands can satisfy your taste for change the way that Sculptured can. From Metal Maniacs. I wonder if that was Jeff Wagner. It probably was. Fans of Agalloch, of course, especially likely Sloth, Nothing, Stratosphere. Yeah, I know them. They're that large chamber group. A lot of diversity and dynamics. The Desert of Trom, Winds, I know them, and The Age of Silence. There's a band, though, that I've seen mentioned a lot. Is the band Epple Duath, which I need to go back and listen to them. I haven't listened to them in a long time. But this is, to me, the best thing they've done. And they use samples. The drums on this record, Embodiment, are just fantastic. They're really up front. The mixing, it's almost like a lead drum. But it's a jazz drum clinic at times. And the vocals are, while they're still kind of minimalistic and they do use some of the death metal, they're almost more black metal-ish shrieks at point. I would almost describe, and they fit better. In other words, I find that on this album, Embodiment, it's prog metal with really good songwriting. The songwriting's a big step up. And they use the samples, of course. They use samples on the previous two records here and there. I think they're the most effective. The last track, Embodiment, at the end of it, with the piano, they took a sample from this film, I think it was David Cronenberg, or maybe David Lynch, called The Camera, about a guy talking about how he was watching a movie and suddenly he got frightened in the theater, in the cinema, as he says, and suddenly he was starting to age. He didn't understand. He think the movie was making him age. I think the short film is still online. I remember finding it a year or two after, finding out on MySpace at that time. This was 2009, 2010. I think Don may have responded where it was taken from, but I mean, some of the lyrics are about sort of existence, bodily existence. Of course, dying and living, that kind of stuff. It's not unusual, but it's more literal from a standpoint of your physical body. But if I was picking, let Let me see if I can't even find the track list on here. If I was picking my favorites, the title track, which is like 10 minutes, would be my favorite on Embodiment. And it's like in 2008 when this came out like in January, February. It was my favorite album. It was #1 on my list for a little while. Then Apes and Androids came in and some other stuff. But I'd still put it easily in the top 10 from that album. Embodiment is the purest form of horror. That's the one. But Bodies Without Organs, the use of piano on that track. Really the whole record, Taking My Body Apart, The Shape of Rage, and A Moment of Uncertainty. You know, they write these albums that have like 4 to 6 or 7 tracks sculptured, and they're always, you know, multi-parts. But the difference I find with this one is the whole thing flows really well. And even the production's slightly better. And I think the piano really stands out. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff about this record. So this was 2008. Then I don't know when it was. You know, Don Anderson was busy doing Agalloch. They had 2 years later, which I have, Marrow the Spirit came out, and then they put out a record a few years after that. It was Kindly Bent to Free Us, I think it was. I'm thinking of Cynic. I always get them and Cynic mixed up, but let's see here. I know it was like 2014, 2015 that the last Agalloch record, 'cause I saw them live. And actually, I ended up meeting him. I don't know if I had him sign this. I have to look, but Serpent and the Sphere. I'm thinking of Cynic, I think. The Serpent and the Sphere came out in 2014, and then Agalloch kind of called it a day like a year or two later. They did some more touring. And then, you know, he had mentioned, I think even before that record had come out, a new record he'd been working on, Don Anderson. And the title had been even given at least 3 or 4 years ago, called Liminal Phase. But then it's like, and he was known as Matrix Metal on Facebook and stuff, and I would go there every month or two, and just, there was nothing. Absolutely no information, no updates about anything. He was like either off social media or whatever. So I was at one point thinking this thing would never come out, but finally it was like he was getting more active during COVID, it seemed like last year. Maybe COVID gave him, maybe he has a day job, and maybe COVID gave him more time because he was at home more to finally finish working on it. So it came out, the Liminal Phase, and it's a gatefold. So this is the 4th sculptured record. And the first single, I know there was some controversy about it where people didn't like the way the production and stuff, some comments on that. But the only thing I'll make a comment about this after I show this and talk about it. And I've listened to this album, The Liminal Phase, maybe in total about 3 or 4 times. It came out just a couple weeks ago. It came out, man, maybe it was last month. It was like late August or early September. But it was late August, like August 27th. I was really excited for it. They shared a single, and I liked it. I didn't mind the production. I don't know if there's a download code on here. I have it. No, there's not. I think they would have given me a download. I think I ended up buying it on the Bandcamp, or maybe when I pre-ordered this, I guess I got a link. But I will say this: there's definitely, because it's been 13 years. So this is 2021, and this album's Embodiment came out in 2008. There's definitely a change. I mean, you know, it's that many years gone, you're not going to necessarily record and write and want to write the same record twice. There's no samples on this. Not much piano, really. But they use, it sounds like, both strings and possibly even like some mellotron. But the vocals are all clean. And, you know, the membership of the band, other than Don Anderson, might be a little different. Marius Jolie, Andy Winter, he plays keyboards, okay. Marty Hill plays drums, and Jason Walton plays bass. Then someone named Kevin Hufnagel played guitar. I mean, I'm not sure if any of these members are from Agalloch or previously with Agalloch, but yeah. And I mean, I guess I'd say this: it's, for what it is, it's pretty good in that the songs have moments to enjoy, especially the string sections, the Liminal Phase. The vocals they fit the music, but they're not spectacular exactly, but I'm still kind of working on to see if it's going to go further. I did listen to some of it yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, this is still pretty good, but I don't know. Maybe this is a one-off thing. They're never going to write a record exactly like this. And this might be the only time we get another sculptured. I don't know, because it took so long to make this record, if Don Anderson's going to continue. You know, granted, Subterranean Masquerade had a similar history, and then they've releasing like 3 albums in the last 7 years, but because they had that big gap as well. I don't know. I'm liking this record. I think it will definitely be on my end of year list. But the thing is, the Agalloch fans, some of them never had heard Sculptured recently, and I just saw some comments saying that this is terrible. And they're expecting it to be, like Agalloch. It's like, why would you do this? Why would you do this instead of Agalloch? And the point was, it's not supposed to sound like Agalloch. Although I'll say the first couple records, there's definitely moments that remind me of Agalloch, but Model of the Well is a closer comparison. Just sort of like it's like chamber prog metal, chamber prog death metal with jazz elements. But it's pretty good. Again, the string sections are strings and cello, like violin, cello, and some other stuff on here that I can tell is they were on a patch. Those are my favorite moments of this. But you can see it's only 5 songs, and it's kind of hard to see that. But State of Exception? That might be my favorite. But I'd compare this more in terms of the sort of what I'm enjoying about it to the first 2 records as opposed to Embodiment, in that I like certain moments, but the songs themselves are not. Like the first track, I'd say The Ordeal of Undecidability would be like maybe the one song I probably like listening from beginning to end. I'm like I don't wander off and get distracted. But anyway, so I was gonna just show 1 or 2 other things just as an update. That's the story on Agalloch. I did find this. We went to Half Price Books last weekend, and I found this. This is a Rush it's called On the Garden Road. Garden Road's a song that Rush played live and even recorded a version of it. At least played live frequently. Yeah, they just played it live, and frequently in the early days, or in the early '70s. And it was on this recording. This is a radio broadcast, a live that was in Cleveland '74, which is from the Agora Ballroom. This is a highly circulated bootleg. Most Rush fans that have any bootlegs know about this. But not only does it have Garden Road, it also that closes with that song. It has Fancy Dancer, which I used to thought it was called Peace of Mind, because I had a bootleg that said Peace of Mind, and that was actually Fancy Dancer. But I thought I'd had like one of the most unheard Rush live tracks that people I didn't know but heard. But this was in '74, right? Probably after the first album, the self-titled album had come out. So, but yeah, I have this on cassette tape, but now I have it on vinyl. It's a thick vinyl. It's got a lot of the tracks from the first record. Bad Boy, which I think is a Beatles cover. But yeah, it's almost the whole first record if you look at the track list. So Live Legends, Rush. It wasn't too expensive, thankfully, and it just kind of, I haven't been shopping for records in the stores. I did order some vinyl recently that I'll show eventually, but there was one other thing that I did pick up. Not music, but been enjoying Why the Last Man. I know people have been criticizing it, but I'll get into more of the details of it once the show's over in a little over a month, once they finish the first season. But I did find someone had sold their entire collection. I couldn't remember which issues I had, all the issues, but so I bought, I believe it's the entire series of Ex Machina, the other Brian K. Vaughan. Well, it's sort of 1 or 1A or my second favorite, but I've only read like maybe half of these, and I read them out of order. So I get to at some point hopefully reread this whole thing. So go through all the titles. I want to do that, but the story of Mayor 100. This guy lives in New York City both before and after 9/11, and he's like he's a vigilante of sorts. But yeah, some people think, and they're making a movie out of this with Oscar Isaac, who ironically, Oscar Isaac was in a movie called Ex Machina back in like 2014, one of those A24 movies. But I don't know if they're going to call it something else, but he's the lead. I believe he plays Mayor 100. So, Term Limits, look at some of the titles. Ring Out the Old, Dirty Tricks, Ex Cathedral, or Cathedra, Power Down, Smoke Smoke, March to War, Fact or Fiction, Tag, and The First 100 Days. So, yeah, I'm maybe if I get around to finally reading this whole thing in a few months, whenever I have the time, I will actually post a post reading of, and we get more information on that movie. A movie could be a couple years away, I don't know, but I think at least getting both Why the Last Man and Runaways on is being a springboard. They're also going to be doing Paper Girls, so Brian K. Vaughan's a lot of his adaptations are finally seeing the light of day into Hollywood. So, but anyway, that's the story on Sculpture, the new Sculpture record, Rush vinyl, and Ex Machina. what have you picked up recently? Have you listened? Are you an Agalloch fan? What do you think of Agalloch? What do you think of Sculptured? I'd love to know, but thanks for watching. Please leave a comment if you'd like to, and I'll see you next time.